Ladies and gentlemen, I broke a record. A couple of days ago, I made a YouTube video where I showed you a chess game that I played on chess.com, hit game review afterward, and it awarded me several brilliant moves and an estimated elo of 3,200, which is on the likes of Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru. Well, today I will be sharing a game with you that I played at a higher accuracy than that and received a game review estimate of 3,400. I'm very proud of this game. The last time we did this, I showed you the live footage, and then I analyzed the game. Today, I will be just sharing the game with all of you, and then we will take a look at the game review afterward. A lot of you like this type of content because I make a lot of different type of content. You like to make fun of low elo games. You like to enjoy Magnus games. But this is a game you can both enjoy and learn several things from. So, you know, put me next to you while you eat and listen to me on the AirPods or smart TV or wherever you're watching. And before we jump into the game, there's no sponsor, so you don't have to, skip ahead. But I was invited to an amazing podcast that is organized by Team Liquid, the esports org, and they were sponsored by Alienware, the company that makes laptops and all sorts of amazing things. And the host is Disguised Toast, and it's called Two People Talking. I'm going to put a link to it in the description. It's me talking for 30 minutes, so hopefully you appreciate it. It's just about my life, and it's a little bit different style content. Big shout out to them. We recorded this episode in Los Angeles. So I just like to do these things. I like to share them with you, and I will put a link to the description. It's not a sponsored thing. You don't have to buy anything. My opponent for this game was Jack Rogers, who is an Italian. That's the Italian flag, right? Australian. Sorry. It's bad with flags. I'm just kidding. Maybe I'm not, actually. You can just think I'm stupid. And Jack played d4, d5, c4. He played the Queen's Gambit. Jack is a streamer as well, and I chose to accept the Gambit. Of course, you can decline the Gambit, you can play the Albin counter Gambit, you can play the Chigorin, you can play the Slav defense, you can play a million different things here. I play a lot of different openings. I have a course on Chessly on the Queen's Gambit, declined with a6, and I've been playing that quite a lot, but I decided for this game, let's play DC. Now, I do not recommend the Queen's Gambit accepted for like 99% of the rating ladder, because you are not going to be able to preserve this pawn with black, and in many lines, white is just going to get the entire center. So I do not recommend Queen's Gambit accepted. I mean, you can play it, sure, but you really have a big responsibility on yourself to know how to equalize if you're going to take that pawn and lose the center. I've played many lines of the Queen's Gambit accepted, and against the move e3, trying to win this pawn back immediately, I like to play e5 counterattack. Black basically is trying to distract white. It's like trying to distract a dog on the street from picking up garbage with, a squeaky toy or something. And basically, if white decides to take this pawn instead, it is very inaccurate because white loses the right to castle, and black now catches up in development, castles quickly, and is in very good shape. And if white doesn't do that, if white doesn't take this pawn, then black is going to take the pawn back, and white will take and then develop, and things will be normal. I have played this line many times. E takes d4, e takes d4, bishop d6, knight f3, knight f6, castles, castles, knight c3, knight c6. It's just a very, very standard position. But there is one line that is very cancerous, and it is this line queen e2 check. And this line is very annoying. It's actually, I think, even played knight f3, knight f6, queen e2 check. And according to Stockfish, white is better basically forever. Like, black will never be better because black has to trade the queens. This is very meta stuff. You don't really have to worry about this. So what I like to sometimes do is I like to play knight c6. Knight c6 is extremely provocative. It's provocative because, first of all, it allows the move d5, which is not a very good move, but it's a very aggressive move. And then I would, like, counterattack the bishop or drop the knight back, and we would get a closed position. There's another line here that's extremely provocative. Knight f3, e4, and white here can play queen b3. Counterattacking this pawn on f7, trying to set up very nasty intentions. For example, black will play queen g5. And white can take and then play knight g3 and bring the bishop back to f1 to kick you out. It's like very, very sharp stuff. It's very complicated and very convoluted. And that is why I like to play the move knight c6. Now, here Jack played the move knight e2. This is not a good move. As you can see with white, if you play what's called a not a good move, you are just equal, which is the way chess works. White has the luxury of moving first, so if white plays a move that's not fully accurate, white is not going to be in a worse or losing position. white is going to be in an equal position. You should be developing your pieces to their most natural positions. You should not play knight e2. But he played knight e2. And at this point, I was like, well, I mean, the knight's not on its natural square, so obviously this is not a great thing. I can play knight f6, bishop d6, bishop b4, castle. I decided now to play e takes d4. My logic was that after e takes d4, obviously this is a better version of when the knight is on f3, right? Like, I just showed you a line where we can get this and the queen e2 check stuff, but this is just clearly a better version because the knight is not in its most active position and queen e2 is not possible. And I thought, okay, knight f6, and we will develop our pieces and we will castle. And I thought he would castle short. He would castle short. I would play bishop d6 or bishop b4. I would castle. I would play bishop f5. And this is what's called an isolated queen's pawn, IQP. Queen's pawn. It has no neighbors on e and c. And white is trying to push it forward. Black is trying to blockade it by trading, blockading it on the d5 square, and then winning it. He played knight c3. This is a move I expected. I played bishop d6. And I expected him to castle here. And just a little mini lesson in and of itself. Again, I like to make these videos of my own games to brag about my intelligence, but I also want to teach you a few things. A little quiz, chess quiz. Is there a Greek gift sacrifice on h2? The answer to the question is no. Why? Bishop takes h2 is possible. That is one check mark. Knight g4 check is possible. That is a second check mark. Queen h4 looks like it's winning. But in this position, white can stop queen h4. Queen h2, rather, with bishop f4. It's very important that the opponent does not have a backup to play defense. Okay? You have two of the three necessities to land the Greek gift sacrifice here, but you do not have a guaranteed mate. And after bishop f4, you lose. But none of that even had to happen because he went bishop e3, and then he played h3. And I was like, okay, well, now I can obviously play h6, a6, rook e8, bishop f5. I thought, you know, he's stalling, so I should also stall. But the move a6 has another idea, which is that I would like to play the move pawn to b5, and also I would like to prevent this. But I don't think a6 is, you know, I should obviously be playing bishop f5 in this position. And he played the move h3 to prevent me from going knight g4. Like, even here, I could have considered playing knight to g4 to just get to just get the bishop. And here's a nice way that he can land himself in some, you know, in a very dire situation for his king, you know. So castles, h3, a6, and he played the move a4. Right? He plays a4, which stops me from playing b5, and I develop. Okay, let's pause. We've both made 10 moves. Who's better? How do you determine that? How do you determine in a chess position who is better? So far, I haven't played any particularly extraordinary moves, but I'm doing a good job. Black is a little bit better. Why? Why? Material. Equal. King safety. You know, what's funny is, let's say white castles in this position. Probably equal, right? Probably equal. The only reason black is considered better here, according to the computer, is the odd configuration of these four pieces. These four pieces, I mean, nothing's, right? Like, this bishop is stuck in two pawns. The knight is passive. And a4 is an overreaction to the move a6, because now the b4 square has access. You see, my friends, when you move a pawn two squares, you weaken things that it used to be able to control. One square is okay. 0 squares is also okay. One square, you can still go two. When you go two with a pawn, you ain't going backwards. The computer here thinks that to meet b5, my opponent should play a3. Why? Because unless it is absolutely required, a smaller commitment from a pawn might be better. It just might be better. Best example I can give you on the other side of the board. h3 is fine. h4 is insane. Knight g4, and I target the bishop, and the knight, you know, the knight will never get kicked out. So a couple of these things contribute to the fact that white does not have a great position. And here he continues to waste time. It's more often than not a good decision not to go backwards in chess. So moves like bishop d3, moves like bishop c1 or knight c1 or something like that. He should castle, he should try to make some forward progress, but he goes back to d3. This is not a great move. It's not a great move because in chess, 3 does not always equal 3. This trade benefits black more than it does white. Why? Because if this trade goes down in any capacity, he has lost one of his active pieces. That bishop was probably white's best piece. I still have 3 very active pieces. He doesn't. This bishop is not good. His knight is not good, and I can go knight b4. And then I can put my rook as a target, and he still hasn't castled. So he's wasting a little bit of time here. This is the bad thing about the move bishop d3. Now, I can take the bishop, and that's a completely reasonable move, but I opted in this position to do something called keeping the tension. There's a couple of ways to keep the tension in this position. One of them, when you're faced with a bishop trade, is the rock back. Just rock it back. This is fine, but I figured that this doesn't really make me any progress in the position, and it's okay for me to take toward the center because there's no way for my opponent to get in toward my king. There's another way, and it's to reinforce your piece. Now, there are 2 ways I can reinforce my piece right now. I can play queen to d7, which defends it with the queen, and I can play knight e7, which defends it with the knight, and then maybe I can take on f5. Now, judging from what I've been saying in this video, are you paying attention? Are you listening? Do you just have me on? You're just doing some, kitchen work while I talk to you? Well, now I'm going to make you feel embarrassed because I'm calling you out. Pay attention. Look at the screen. Pause what you're doing. I'll wait. I'm going to take a sip of this smoothie Lucy made me. Look at the screen. And pay attention. Let's get better at chess. All right? I've talked about making progress in a position. I say, unless you have to go backwards, you are absolutely certain you have to go backwards, don't go backwards. Make progress in the position. Which of these 2 moves makes progress in the position? This one. I defend my bishop, I connect my rooks, and they are going to go to the center lines where they are going to be useful. The E and D files are open. I've traded those pawns off, which means my rooks would go like this. Now, he takes, which allows me to make progress with my queen, and he plays queen to b1, offering me a trade of queens. Should you trade queens, or should you go away? Why or why not? Right? Why or why not? It's better not to trade the queens. It's better not to trade the queens. Queen h5 is not necessarily the best move, but you can go queen h5, queen e6, queen a5. This is letting white off the hook. There are only so many pieces that you can trade on a chessboard. That trade does not in any way, shape, or form benefit black. Like, there is no world in which it does. Because you could say, well, white can't castle, but white could castle this way. However, keeping the queen on the board allows black to have future prospects. And furthermore, why is this queen here, right? 2 things. White's queen desperately went over to b1 looking for an exchange, but it didn't get one. So now you look kind of silly, right? You overcommitted. So what does my opponent do? Plays here. My opponent was too nervous to castle still, thinking that I would create some sort of attack. Maybe a rook here, maybe a rook here, maybe bring my knight. So they played queen c2. Now, I played knight b4 in this position, taking advantage of my opponent's move several moves ago, right? So every single move that I'm making has a logical decision behind it, okay? Like every move that I'm making builds upon the other. I improve my position. I castled. I develop my pieces. I threatened b5, making my opponent overcommit, and now I'm taking advantage of that. Now queen to d2. Now what? Knight e4, not possible. We don't have any checks, right? What do we do? How do you make a plan in chess? These are all things you're learning. If you're still here 14 minutes into the video, you're not bored yet because I haven't like screamed the rook or something or spilled something on myself. Good. You're going to learn some more stuff. What do you do when there's nothing to do in chess? What do you do when there is nothing to do in chess? Do I have any checks? No. None of them good. Attacks? No. Captures? No. Does my opponent have any threats? Maybe g4, but then I can just take, right? Knight g3, I can just take. Improve the position. Make a move that doesn't overcommit, that improves the position. Rook e8 or rook d8. Choose one. I choose here. Simple, improving move played in 1 second. I don't know what my opponent is going to do, but they choose to castle queenside. As you can see, the computer really doesn't like that move. Why does the computer really not like that move? My opponent played that move with the intention of playing g4, f4, knight f4, knight g3, starting a big attack. Opposite side castling is the equivalent of dropping the gloves in hockey. You're going to fight. How do you fight when you're on opposite sides? Pawn breaks, piece play. So in this position, anticipating g4 and the arrival of these pieces, I played the move queen to g6. I thought for a while, I thought for 24 seconds, I was calculating between b5 straight away, starting an attack and allowing g4, queen g6. I was unhappy with this because I thought maybe my opponent could play something like a5, actually, and stop me from getting there. But I decided to play queen g6, and I thought I can play b5, but now I have eyes over here, and I am threatening two different checkmates. The move queen g6 simultaneously targets the c2 square, and it also cuts off the king's escape, so knight a2 is mate. So now both of these pieces are frozen because of both of these pieces. You can't move either of them because I will mate you or I will mate you on a2. So now it is kind of a unstoppable force meets an immovable object. Since I know these two pieces cannot move, I now suddenly am much more confident jumping into those two squares that are controlled by those pieces, and furthermore, a move like f4 loses on the spot because I can take the bishop. I can take the bishop because the queen cannot take back my rook. These are the things, these are the piece mechanics you have to pay attention to. My opponent played the move g4. I cannot sacrifice now because then fe. But I played knight d5. With pressure on this, you cannot take because knight a2 is mate. My opponent went h4, looking to create an attack. You also may be asking yourself, isn't g2 free? Yes, it's not a priority though. If something like, I don't know, b3 was played in this position, if you take on g2, you are a nutcase, okay? That is insane. Why would you open the door to this? That is not the priority of the position. So g4 played, I play knight d5, h4, and right before my opponent is able to cause enough problems, I realize the queen and the pawn are overloaded. The queen is overloaded. It can't guard two things at once. So I take the bishop. Now I get a brilliant move for this one. Rook takes e3. Taking advantage of the rapidly failing piece mechanics in the white position, queen to c2, g6 to c2 is mate, so you cannot do this. Also, by coming here, I am pressuring the knight. I am pressuring this. And my opponent plays h5. And now I rotate my queen. I avoid this, but I defend my rook. So now I am a pawn up. I still have a very strong attack, and I am not trying to take any of these pawns. If my opponent plays a move like h6 in this position, I can just ignore it. I can also just play g6, but I can also just ignore it. Okay, my opponent plays the move d5. Simple, straightforward. I slide my queen forward one square. My winning ideas in this position include putting a rook on d3, putting a rook on e8, converting everything, or there are two ways to win a winning position. You can simplify down to a completely winning endgame, like 2 pawns up, or you can go for checkmate. Opponent plays knight d4. I play rook d3. I am now pressuring the queen. I'm pressuring this. Opponent plays queen f2. And I notice here, my rook cannot be taken because of this fork. So, knight, queen on same diagonal as one of my diagonal attackers, bishop c5. I pressure this. I pressure that, I pressure that, I cannot be taken. Queen g5 check anytime I want it. My opponent plays knight e2, which drops the knight back and defends this. But when the knight moved, it took its eye off of something it used to protect. I play queen takes d5. I am now up 30 seconds on the clock. I am up 2 pawns. Queen c4, queen a2 are knocking on the door to the white king. d4 has tremendous pressure mounting on it. This is under fire, and in this position, my opponent resigned the game. Had my opponent continued the game with something like knight c3, of course I would just take, and something like this would check, and I'm completely winning. Easiest way to win this, take the knight. Easiest way to win this, take the knight, drop back, make sure you don't get back rank checkmated, and win the game. My opponent resigned. And then I was informed that I played this game at the accuracy of, I will show you. I played this game at the accuracy of 97%, and I got an estimated elo. Moment. Do apologize for this terrible blunder. Here we go. A little bit ugly. I don't know why it's so gigantic. Just very excited to show you this giant thing here. I will shrink myself. I do not need to be 97%. Brilliant move. 3,400. I'm proud of this one, my friends. Go check out the Disguised Toast Alienware Team Liquid podcast, by the way. I'll see you in the next video. Get out of here.